reading this book. Okay. The U.S. Urban Experience. Mary Houghton and Ronald Growinski are bankers from Chicago. There was no reason why I should ever know about them, but life brought us together and we soon became close friends and associates in exciting ventures. They had bought an ailing community bank in an area of Chicago which, which had been abandoned by white store owner and white run businesses because blacks were moving into the neighborhood. The South Shore Bank won back the community's confidence, acquired new depositors, and began lending to individuals whom traditional banks had avoided. When the Ford Foundation needed some independent bankers to appraise my proposed guarantee fund, Ron and Mary were asked to visit Bangladesh to evaluate the Grameen Bank. From the outset, they loved what they saw us doing and wished to do the same in the ghettos of Chicago. It was their impetus and endless dedication that brought the Grameen experience to North America. At the request of Ron and Mary, I visited Chicago for the first time in 1985. I was invited to talk to activists, economists, and bankers and community leaders. It was quite a novel experience for me. Almost everyone I addressed dismissed what I had to say, saying that there was no way the Bangladeshi experience could be relevant to the poverty eradication in the US. The two societies were at an astronomical distance from each other, ran their argument. Who needed a microloan in Chicago? People need jobs, training, healthcare, and protection from drugs and violence. Self-employment was prehistoric concept, lingering only in the third world and in primitive societies. Low-income people in Chicago needed money for rent and to live on, not for investment. What would they invest in anyway? They had no skill and so on. I advanced the same argument I had done in bankers in Bangladesh, namely the poor are very creative. They know how to earn a living, even how to change their life. They need an is all they need is the opportunity. Credit brings the opportunities. And I added, yes, our two societies are different and thousands of miles apart, but I do not see any difference between the poor of Bangladesh and the poor of Chicago. The problem and consequences of the poverty are the same. And so things stood. Only Ron and Mary believed in me, and only they decided to try a Grameen type credit operation in Chicago. The Women's Self Employment Program, WSEP, created by Ron and Mary, was the first step in our attempt to replicate Grameen's idea in the United States. It was a loud and clear affirmation that self employment is relevant not only to the third world but also to help solve the problems of poverty in the most advanced and developed societies on the earth. Today, the offices of the WSEP are located on the seventh floor of a building on Washington Street in the heart of Chicago downtown area. 25 female enterprise agents, two-thirds of them Afro American, with the help of interns, volunteers, and support staff, track fledgling businesses, collect loans, and help their borrowers map out strategy. WSEP has lent over 1 million to more than 300 businesses in Chicago and had offered business counseling services to 5,000 women Its repayment rate is currently 93%. The WSEP program that was the most difficult to launch and that generated the most controversy was the Full Circle Fund, FCF. Started in 1988, it encouraged economic development in depressed community by giving women access to investment capital of $300 to $1,500 if they agreed to join a group of five peers and were able to pursue them as to the soundness of their business proposal. The credit rating or access to collateral of the prospective borrowers were not taken into account as part of the loan approval process. Hmm. Coney Even, executive director of the WSEP, was new in this business, but very willing to learn and make it work in Chicago. Susan Matuisi, a recent graduate from MIT, joined Coney as a staff member of FCF, which was designed to be an exact replica of a Grameen program in the inner city of Chicago. I suggested that both Connie and Susan should visit Grameen to gain total exposure to our system before they launched the FCF. So they came and lived in Grameen village to see at close range how Grameen functions. They spent long sessions with our field staff and zonal managers. And when they returned to Chicago to translate their idea into reality, they were beaming with confidence and followed our Grameen handbook to the letter. And it worked. In organizing the FCF, I saw in practice how welfare laws in the United States created these incentives for the welfare recipient to pull themselves out of welfare. If you are on welfare, all the doors and windows are tightly locked so that you cannot find any opening even to think about getting out, and you're virtually a virtual prisoner not only of poverty but of those who would help you. You earn a dollar, this income has to be reported to the welfare authority. They will deduct this dollar from your welfare check, and you are not allowed to borrow money from any institutional source. Under the then existing law of Illinois, one could not operate a microcredit program such as the FCF with welfare recipients. The WSEP has to negotiate with the welfare authority to get a special dispensation. I was brought to the state welfare authority to testify that credit can help people get off welfare, that giving credit to welfare recipients as an experiment would be a good idea, and that they should consider giving welfare recipients who become member of the FCF a waiver from the law for an experimental period of 3 years. After a protracted negotiation, the state of Illinois approved a waiver for 1 year. Subsequently, this waiver was renewed on an annual basis. Now, thanks to the success of the SCF, the law in Illinois has been amended to allow people to borrow while they still on welfare. The FCF made a bold start, defied all the conventional advice. Everyone argued that the five women group idea would not work because Americans are too independent. Not only did it worked in one of the toughest neighborhoods in the inner city of Chicago. One of the most difficult problems for the prospective member was finding friends with whom to form groups. So, the FCF organized regular parties to let people get acquainted. I was invited to meet the borrower, visit their homes, join them in celebration when the FCF was well underway. What struck me most were the many similarities between Bangladesh and Chicago. I always believed these similarities existed, but seeing them so plainly in front of my eyes was quite an experience. In the poor people of Illinois, I saw the same excitement as the poor of Tangel, heard the same expression of self discovery, same aspirations, the same warmth in their voices. Of course, they were not raising chickens or husking rice as Bangladeshi women do, but they knew what they could do to earn an income. I could have never imagined what skills they possessed and what niche they could possibly occupy in the market. But this was not a problem for them. One borrower told me, "All my friends have been telling me that I make the best coffee cake in the world. They used to ask me to make coffee cakes for their guests. Now baking coffee cake has become my business. I'm glad the WSEP gave me the money to turn my hobby into a business. I have a lot of customers. My coffee cake still is the best in the world. Come and try it." Another woman said her business was storytelling, and for the life of me, I could not figure out how storytelling could be a business. She explained, "At parties, I am invited to tell stories. I get paid for that. People love my stories. With my microloan, I have produced cassettes of my storytelling. Now I sell them through neighborhood stores. See my poster? Isn't this beautiful?" It was beautiful. Two other Chicago borrowers used their loan to go into fashion industry. They designed and sold clothes. They took me to the opening of their new store which they jointly rented. It was a great celebration and all their fellow borrowers in the FCS showed up to participate. It was touching to see these women celebrate their economy and social freedom when, for so long, daily survival had depended on the standing on a welfare line to receive a check which degrade their dignity as human beings. When the FCF started a program in Inglewood, they took me to visit the neighborhood. I saw the caution they took in transporting me to Englewood. I wanted to walk in the street to get a feel for everyday life, but I was not allowed. I met the staff inside the room, and I was taken to meet a couple of possible borrowers. For I felt tension and fear everywhere. Returning to the WSEP's office, my escorts explained to me the reasons. Englewood is an extremely violent place. Nobody feels safe in the neighborhood. After sunset, even the local dare not walk on those roads, those streets. But today, the WSEP runs a very successful microcredit program in Englewood. I especially remember a vivid and most moving experience. I had a while visiting a Hispanic neighborhood on the west side of Chicago. The WSEP had already been working in this area for 2 years when I visited it. The first thing that shocked me when I arrived there was the suddenly the use of English language disappear. All I could hear was Spanish, a language I do not understand at all. So I became doubly a foreigner and a totally dependent on the WSEP staff member who were bilingual. They took me to meet several members of the borrowing groups. I will never forget one of the members, a frightened looking woman in her early 40s who spoke only Spanish. I told her, "These are beautiful quilts and embroidered designs you made. When did you think of starting business with this?" Though through an interpreter, she explained her life to me in great detail. When Jenny, a staff of member of WSEP, came to and talked to me, I was scared. I did not believe her. I thought she's going to sell me something. I avoided her. She came back another time with another woman, a Hispanic woman from this neighborhood. They tried to talk to me, but I was afraid to listen. They were talking about business. I had no understanding of business. My husband had a hard life. He works in a factory. He gets very angry if I ever try talking to outsiders. He does not like me going out of the apartment by myself. I didn't know anybody in Chicago. I had been living here with my husband for the last 15 years since I came from Mexico. Jenny kept coming back. She told me about Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, a faraway country. She told me how women in that country started changing their life. I liked the story she told me, and I wish I could be like the women in that country. But here, things were so rough. I did not dare to do anything by myself. My husband would kill me if I created trouble for him. I started talking to Jenny. She introduced me to other women in the neighborhood. I listened to them. They told me about their hard life, about their children, about their husband, about their parents, about their brothers and sisters, about their childhood. I saw how much alike we were. I was no longer afraid of them. We talked about Jenny. We talked about the WSEP. We talked about the Grameen Bank. We began to imagine we might do the same thing as the women of Bangladesh. We discussed what business we might engage in. We encouraged each other. We collected information for each other. We asked Jenny for more information. Finally, we formed a group. Two by two, we took loans. We helped each other in business. I paid back my first loan of $600. Now I'm in the middle of my second loan. I took $1,000 for the second time. Do you have problem in selling your products? No, not at all. I'm beginning in filling my orders. I could sell much more, but I do everything by myself by hand. I have nobody to help me. My sons go to school. He always out. I'm the only one at home. Are you happy with the income you make? She remained silent for a long time. Then, in a whisper, she started talking very slowly. I thought she would probably say in Spanish that the money was not much, but that it helped her, something like that. She stopped speaking, and the interpreter said in English, I never expect that I would ever earn money. My husband never gave me any money to spend. We shop together, he pays. I never had money of my own. For the 15 years that I live in America, I have never even have a bank account. Now, I have money. I have my own bank account. I have a checkbook. My husband does not know anything about it. I have not dared to tell him yet. I did not know what to say. To hide my emotion, I asked. Many people tell me that if the WSEP did not insist on forming groups, it would be so much easier for people to borrow. Do you agree? She looked at me when the interpreter translated the question and replied softly. In the 15 years I have been here, I never had a friend. I didn't even know anybody. I was all alone. Now I have many friends. My four friends in the groups are like my own sisters. Even if the WSEP did not give us money, I would not leave the group. Her eyes filled with tears. She covered her face with both her hands while the translation was in progress. I was stunned. Wow, just nice.